Hi, welcome to the Rockland Arts Festival. My name is Michael Kraft. I'm one of the co-coordinators, and tonight we're going inside the artist's mind. Be sure to check out all the events that we have coming up at www.rocklandartsfestival.org. And to sign up for the events, you must register for the events. And also be sure to stick around when we're done because we're going to be announcing a winner for a prize. Anyone who has a question, please put that down in the Q&A. So tonight, my guests are Christina Brady, who's a multimedia artist and entrepreneur. We have international artist Inness Hancock. We have photographer Udor, and we have Jean-Marc Superville Sovack, who is a multimedia and public art artist. Welcome, all of you.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have some questions for you. And first off, what was your breakthrough in the art world? Let's start off with Inness.
Hi. Well, thank you so much for having us. This is wonderful. Thank you. I was thinking about it. I've always been a painter, and I think what I would consider a breakthrough moment, even though I was always doing studio visits and showing here and there as I raised my children, I was curated into a show sort of right in the middle of COVID. I want to say it was 2020, and he saw my work and curated me into a show. He was a New York Times art critic, and he was putting together a show about landscape and how we perceive land. And he chose one of mine. And I think from there, I really got probably 2 or 3 other opportunities to show and really began to work on my public profile because I felt that was important. The work sold in that show, and I felt a responsibility to him and to the gallery and to the buyer to really kind of ramp up my presence. And once I did that, rather than concentrating solely on just making the art as I had just for the previous couple of years, things started to come together. So I guess that would be my breakthrough moment.
Okay, Jean-Marc.
Well, first of all, congrats on that show. It sounds great. Yeah. If you need to send some New York Times folks my way, just
I
go
know.
ahead.
I could have done worse, right? It was great.
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and I don't know what a breakthrough looks like at this point. I mean, I feel like we're, emerging artists is such a terrible term to have to bear because you're kind of constantly emerging. I feel like I'm just perpetually, just coming out of the ground. But I would say that, between the kind of the self-doubt and that Venn diagram of an artist, it's sort of like self-doubt on one side and complete narcissist on the other, and then somehow in the intersection of the two is an artist. The only thing that sort of feels like breaking through is when someone trusts you enough to give you a grant, or trusts you enough to yeah, put yourself out in a show or something like that. And that sort of trust is the only currency. I mean, that's the real gold we got. So that's what if there's any kind of breakthrough involved, it's gonna have to involve some form of mutual trust.
Yeah, it seems like we're always emerging, isn't that? Okay, Udor,
Mm.
your turn.
Well, my story is, quite long, so I keep it short. Um, the thing is, I don't really kind of find that I had like a specific breakthrough. It's a literally lifelong growth into becoming who I'm supposed to be, and to work as an artist. I mean, I started when I was
10, 11 years old to photography. You know, when I was 13, I knew I wanted to be a photographer. At age 15, 16, I grew up in Germany. You have to do an internship in a job that you want to do later on. And I did it in the photo lab of my father's television station in Germany. And then worked another 2 years afterwards, after school, at the photo lab. And I was always drawn to visual arts, blocked by my father, you know, who didn't want me to be a photographer. He wanted to be an engineer. So I got a degree in electrical engineering, which I hated. And then I studied physics, and I dropped out of physics, went into financial sales, and thinking sooner or later, I always will end up as a photographer, right? And when you say breakthrough, could be when I had my own company on Wall Street and I lost everything. I mean, everything. And then I started to work as a photographer. And within weeks, I was nationally published and meeting one person after the other, and then got into fashion photography. Then I got a good name as a fashion photographer. And then through some circumstance, I discovered that I also can paint. In the background, you see one of my paintings. And so it was like a slow process. And for years, for decades, not knowing if there's even a market for someone, for my view of seeing the world, if it's out there. And it kind of like started when I lost my company and everything went to crap. And and then I just like went into the art world as a photographer, and I'm, you know, shooting architecture, real estate, fashion for magazines and whatnot. So it was like all a process, but it really started when I was not able to work in the non-chosen field anymore, in finance, and went full on to work as a photographer, and then also painter, surrealist painter. So this is kind of like a slow process of breakthrough.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's very true. It does seem. I think, you know, Jean-Marc said it. You said it. You know, it's always this kind of slow. There's a lot of ups and downs, right? It's like
Yeah.
a coaster. Okay, Christina.
You know, my very first instinct when answering this question was, it was when I could actually look at somebody and say that I'm an artist. And that really felt like the true breakthrough for me. But then earlier I asked my husband and I said, what do you think my breakthrough moment was? And he looked at me and he said, I know exactly what it was. And I'm like, you do? And he said, yeah, it was when you started Fiberflame. And so, a long story short, when I was, I think I was pregnant with my first biological child. I have 4 children, but our third child, my first biological child, I started having this unbelievable voice just kept coming through me saying, you have to create a creative space. And I didn't really understand what that meant, but what happened, what birthed from me was I created a space called Fiberflame. And it was a make your own mixed media art space in Saugerties. And I built the building that the business was in, and it was, people thought I was insane. I mean, they really did. They really thought that I was crazy. Like, you know, what do you mean you're going to have a place that people are going to come and just make things? I'm like, yeah, people are going to come and we're going to sit and we're going to make things. And so it was an amazing kind of, I call it a craft cafe. And people were able to come in and take a table and choose an item off of what I called my blank shelf. Just endless choices. And then I had a 30-foot wall of insane amounts of supplies. vintage buttons, vintage papers, paint, spray paint, Scrabble tiles. I mean, just anything you could imagine. You could collect at, like, you know, some flea market or vintage store or granny's basement. And so it was there the business was open for 10 years, and it was really there where I was able to really grab hold of a voice where I could help people tap into their own creative spirit. And when I closed my company, when I closed the business, which was bizarre. I mean, it was another voice that came through me that basically said, okay, you're done. Time to go into your own studio. That was Valentine's Day. I closed and sold the property, closed the business, sold the property on Valentine's Day of 2020. So if you kind of think about the insanity of that, I mean, it was literally a universal guidance. I mean, because then what was it? 2 weeks later, the world shut down. So I was forced to go into my studio and really be with myself, which was hard. And I think that was probably about the time when I actually said, yeah, I'm going to call myself an artist now. So yeah.
No longer a stuff maker.
Yeah.
We have some, they're not summer questions, but let me just go right down to, since Christina just went, just a comment. Christina, identifying yourself to others as an artist takes confidence, and you are an artist. Thank you for sharing your story. Patricia asked Christina, where did you get the finances to build your building, get the supplies, and put everything together?
Well, I have to say, I am greatly, greatly blessed by a husband who dearly supports me and who has done well in the world. And I was able to have him back me. So, but I want to say the business supported itself, and it lasted for 10 years. So that is something that I am truly proud of, because it was a labor of love. I wouldn't have made my family be able to survive, but the business survived and was loved by the community.
Well, 10 years is a good run.
Yeah. Is there anywhere we can look online and see, did you still have a website up, or?
You know, I really wish I had done that differently, actually. When when I ended the business, I really just felt like it was over and I was moving into my other thing. But there is, I believe, still an Instagram page that I think I've like been kind of cut out of. I don't know. But yeah, so the website I think got like hacked and whatever, but I think Fiberflame Instagram actually still exists.
Inness, when you say work on your professional profile, what does that mean specifically?
Well, and I can't say that I've done it well, and it's been like a solid 4 years, but a long time ago, we got the domain name. So my website is my name, and it was just kind of sitting there for a long time. Not really, I mean, I think I uploaded some images and, you know, an artist bio or something like that, and it probably sat there and I never even knew how to log in to edit it, right? For like a long time. It just wasn't really on my radar. And I was doing studio visits and in-person sales and a little showing. And so the website didn't feel like a big driver for me. But, you know, like right around 2019, I opened my Instagram and I updated my website. I started to take photographing my work more seriously. I started getting professional photography and professional lighting to photograph it. And took that seriously, started an online database. I rewrote, you know, like we all do every other day, rewrote my statement and my bio. and put together my CV. And once I kind of started to do that, I was like, huh, you know, I really actually have done more than even I kind of thought once I started to list it. And I was like, I've been at this like a long time, you know, and so I'd done a lot of stuff. I'd worked really hard, you know, and to sort of be in a position to take myself seriously and to take what I'd accomplished seriously and put it out there on Instagram and on my website. I started applying for calls for entry for different things. Some of them I got a lot, you know, you don't get everything. And so it just got me into the routine of writing and rewriting my statement, putting myself out there. I started to socialize a little bit more often. And like Christina was saying, you know, when people would say, what do you do? I'm an artist, I'm a painter. That's actually what I do. And not that there was ever any other answer, but I think that showing and selling and having some, you know, there was a lot of press that came with that first show. And I'd shown previously at a show at a museum. And so I could kind of link the two together for the first time. And so put the reviews on my website. So I just sort of started little by little, and I'm still doing it. I'm still trying to figure out, you know, I just got in my email a press release for a show that I'm in right now. And I'm like, what do I do with this press release? Let's figure it out. How's the best way to use this to get my name out there, to kind of use it to show what's important to me in making art. That's my goal in my public profile. So I'd say website and Instagram is basically the short answer.
Yeah, it's really almost a full-time job trying to get through all these other things that we have to do. Your social media, websites, like you said, with CV, which honestly I shouldn't even admit. I just realized what that was in the past year, or didn't even know about it. So it's a lot to do. It's a lot to do.
I will mention just quickly, one thing I forgot to mention this earlier that I felt really turned my career is I got an artist in residency through the US Department of Interiors. And it was that for me, being able as a landscape painter, that's not all I do, but it's one thing that's important to me, especially in national parks. Conservation, anything having to do with that is near and dear to my heart outside of my art practice, but especially within my art practice. And when I got that residency and flew out to California and was given the opportunity to, like you were saying, to have somebody trust me with that opportunity. And, you know, then they ask you to donate a piece of work to leave so that they can use that in their gift shop. They can reproduce it. They can do whatever. And that felt really like another step for me forward. That was a big deal. And that was actually that was probably 6 years ago.
Very good. Well, for Jean-Marc and Udor, you had two great comments. Jean-Marc, thank you for putting the term emerging artists in its place. And Udor, you were very lucky to know at 13 what you wanted to be. Your photography is exceptional.
Thank you so much.
Some great compliments there.
Yeah, I actually, if I can, I don't know if it's like bragging or not, but my brain is actually wired for visual arts, which I only found out like a few years ago when I was at Jean Dolgoff's lab in Long Island. Jean Dolgoff is called Mr. 3D, and he is like a guy who gave Gene Roddenberry the idea for the holodeck, and he is the inventor of the LCD projector and so forth. And he did like tests with me for a specific software that they're doing, and he actually found out that what's called that I had like this highly developed visual. I'm sorry, forgot. Visual something, whatever. So this is like a visual intelligence. So, which is basically how my brain is wired, that I can see three-dimensional in my mind actually. And after I got this like diagnosis, it finally all made sense why I was so drawn to the visual arts since earliest childhood. Right? So basically my brain is literally wired for this, not for finance or any other crap. Visual arts is my thing. Yeah.
Okay. So our next question. When did your passion for your art form begin? Let's start off with Jean-Marc.
Well, I've been thinking about this because the project I'm working on right now has to do with a burial ground. It was the almshouse burial ground, and it's been forgotten actually several times. And there's actually a schoolhouse built on top of it now. And it was what the almshouse called a colored burial ground. And because you had to have a burial ground for white people, you had to have a burial ground for what they call strangers, people who just wash up off the shore in the 19th century, and God forbid you bury them in the wrong place. And then there's the colored cemetery, and as it was called then. And I've been thinking a lot about my grandmother because the whole project is about ancestry and thinking about, well, how do you connect these broken ancestries, these sort of histories that keep getting torn and interrupted. And because that's my lived experience. And I remember my grandmother had this fantastic set of cake icing decorating, and you could you could make all these different shapes and flowers and roses, and she was amazing. She would walk around with that little bag, and it would sort of jingle, and I had these visions of watching my grandmother doing this, and I think that was I couldn't have articulated it as being art then because I didn't know what I didn't know what to call it. But in retrospect now I think about it and I look at it and I was like, wow, those were some hands. Those were some hands that had a lot of wisdom, and I hope I couldn't, I hope I got some of that. That's all.
Okay. Christina,
Okay, wait, repeat the question.
it is when did your passion for your art form begin?
Right. You know, at a really young age, I was always drawn to creating spaces. And mostly some of my youngest memories are being outside and being inside of like a bush that, like you could crawl under, but it would have this canopy, right, that you could be under. And I remember always like kind of, brushing away the debris and kind of exposing the ground and like placing like little sticks and kind of calling that, well, that's going to be the kitchen and this is going to, and the creating spaces has always been this very, very important theme in my life, which is why I think I actually ended up creating Fiberflame, that business, and which is why I then ended up creating, always a studio space in my home, whatever home that I ended up having. But where I'm at right now with specifically mostly working with encaustic and mixed media, that happened in 2018 when I took a mini class at RNF in Kingston. So I know that's not like the most linear answer, but I think I've always been trying to create a space for myself. And so I'm still trying to create space for myself, but that's the best answer I could come up with.
No, that's great. Great. Okay, Udor, when did your passion for your art form begin?
Well, when I was 10 or 11. And so it's a lifelong passion. And even when I was working in finance for 20 years, my end goal was always, in the end, to work as a photographer, right? Mm-hmm. But there is this one thing that when I do photography, I shoot for magazines, for real estate agents, for fashion shows. Like this is all, photography became literally a business. I don't have the motivation to grab my camera outside of work and say, oh, you know what, now let's go out and shoot something for fun. It's 90% of everything that I'm doing is basically commissioned. It's like contract work is something that I have to do to pay the bills. So it's not like, boo-hoo, I'm working as a photographer. Some people, they would dream to work like full-time as this. But the thing is this, when I found out that I was actually also a painter, that I could actually paint, and that was a passionate breakthrough to me, because now I could put something on paper or on canvas, something that is in my mind, but that you can't photograph. So that was like a whole new thing. And I'm really very passionate about my paintings, even though I haven't had time to really finish a lot of paintings for a very long time. But the idea of creating surrealist art, excuse me, what was in my mind, that's something which is like very, very absolutely amazing for me. But then on the technical side, back to photography, I never did videography, but in my mind, I see the concepts for a photo shoot. I plan behind before in my mind, everything is there. And then I started to become a licensed drone pilot, and I want to get into cinematography, aerial cinematography, using my drone to tell stories. And the first time when I did this, and it was commissioned too, but it was my first experiences as a videographer or cinematographer, using the drone as my camera with wings. And once I started to do this, there is a whole new level of passion and expression of my artistic vision, a whole new universe, because now I can use literally, I'm not depending on height, how high I can hold a camera. Now I can fly and shoot something down and telling a story with this. So I want to get more into cinematography, aerial cinematography. Always like growing, learning how to edit. We have no idea about to edit video. But so I have like different recent passion points, which is when I discovered 14, 15 years ago that I'm also a painter. And then just a few years back, being a storyteller, using my video with wings, with the drone. So this is like two relatively recent changes, which is I'm very passionate about.
Great, thank you so much. And last but not least, Inness, when did your passion begin for your art?
I'm gonna have to say this is an easy one. I'm gonna say I was like 2 years old holding crayons. I mean, 100%. I remember it. And I remember loving the feel of them, the smell, the colors, learning the color names for all the, whatever 98 crayons that come in the big, I had an older sister, so we had art supplies, and yeah, that easy. That's it. And I never stopped. There was a time when I was in 4th grade in art class when we were, like tasked with making a drawing of a landscape or something, like draw what you see out the window or something. And I think, after 5 minutes or whatever, I looked up and realized that everybody else's were really different than what I was doing. And mine was really more like a unique vision of how I was experiencing the landscape. And I think that really solidified it for me that, oh, wait, not everybody thinks about like crayons and markers the way I do, with like such profound love and like as an identity. They were my tools from the get-go. And I think if you like asked my mom, it would be the same. I remember just sitting out on the porch all the time, always outside. It's funny, Christina, under bushes all the time, like under a lilac tree, like whatever, just coloring all the time. And I never stopped. So
I love the vision, because it really truly is, right? There are tools. The tools is really, it's just such an amazing thing, right? We can't be without them.
It's like a miraculous thing when something makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And then at whatever point in your life you realize, oh, that doesn't necessarily make sense to everyone else.
Yeah.
You know, my husband's a musician. Music makes no sense to me.
Right.
You know, and it was like, it's like different languages, you know, and you just have to go with whatever your language, your natural language is.
But what a gift, right? To really kind of know what your language is. Because
Yeah.
there's so many who don't know what their language is. And I do feel very lucky, even though I do think it's hard to claim being an artist, but what a gift that we actually know.
Absolutely. And expanding on it all the time. You know,
Yeah.
I'm always experimenting. I go to RNF, always working with different materials and whatever. You want to know what? I always come back to oil paint and crayons.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is going really well, isn't it? Everyone's having fun, and I hope everyone knows that about the Q&A. We are getting, you know, comments and stuff. So just want to make sure again that people know that if they have any comments or questions, to put them in the Q&A. And so my next question is I think it's a fun question. Lisa and I, you know, we have our little YouTube talk show, and we always like to find out. Well, we have a different name for it, but this is a much more this is a much more
Camera appropriate.
classy way. What was that?
Camera appropriate.
Camera appropriate, yeah. Rockland Arts Festival
Yeah.
appropriate way of asking this question, and that is, what's your pet peeve in the art world? And we'll start with Udor.
Well, I think I know you gave me the question before, and I should have thought about it more. I tried to think about it. My pet peeve is when so-called artists don't have pride into their work and their craft. So what I mean by this, you don't have to be an artist and, you know, being like a world-class artist from the beginning. But I'm thinking that an artist, it took me a long time to accept the term that I can call myself an artist, because I had so much respect for the arts and for the term of being a real artist, which is, it's a lifestyle, is a way of thinking outside of the box. It's always like trying to explore new dimensions, new truths, new insights by creating our art. And there's so much of what we are doing is in the art itself. And I think this is beautiful and somehow like a responsible, has like a responsibility, because we're creating art for us, but also for other people, and we're trying to make people think. And then there are people who, and we constantly evolve. I mean, like everybody described, you know, they are like going into using different materials, having different ideas, exploring, you know, different tools. And I think this is like part of being a real artist. And then you have people that say they're doing whatever kind of, I'm sorry to say it like this, but half-assed lines and calling this art, and they don't even know how to create a simple shape when you're, let's say, you're drawing. You know, my breakthrough as a painter and illustrator was when I was able to draw a sphere, a three-dimensional object appearing three-dimensional on a two-dimensional form, or you know, what do you call it? Huh?
The surface.
Yeah, surface. Yeah, you know, we can use that. Yeah, and and so I think that was something where, even though photography and my paintings, they seems to be, or paintings in general, it seems to be like different. For me, it's all the same. It is creating an image. If I'm using a camera and lighting setup and I know how the lighting goes, or if I have an idea for a painting and I'm using the same thing, rule of thirds. I understand light and shadow and colors and how to mix them. This, like, I'm creating an image with it and telling a story, whatever. But my pet peeve are people that don't even try. They're doing the same thing with little technical skill or interest to become better, and then running around and calling themselves artists. I'm an artist. I'm an artist. I'm an artist. And everybody. I don't want to sound elitist. Everybody can call himself an artist. A lot of people are very artistic, and they maybe don't know it. They don't have the tools. But my thing is that for me, in my eye, if you want to be called an artist, I want to see that there is passion and pride into your craft and developing your craft and exploring and becoming more of yourself than you were before with your previous art projects. So I don't know if that is really a pet peeve or so, or just like a bitching old guy on a Zoom call. But that's basically my pet peeve thingy, people who don't have pride and don't try to develop over years and stagnate and misusing or abusing the word artist and excusing bad behavior. That's another thing, bad behavior. I know a few people who are so full of themselves, calling themselves artists and having the worst manners, how they treat other people. I mean, we got to be humble somewhere. It's just, okay, anyway, enough rambling. Yeah.
Good answer. Good. Yeah. Bad behavior is bad, is not good. And we usually
Yeah.
reward bad behavior, which is
Yeah.
worse. Ennis, your pet peeve in the art world.
Yeah, I thought about this. I definitely identify with what Udor just said, for sure. We think about it a lot because, I at least as a painter, I live in my head, right? And so I'm thinking about what I'm making. I'm touching what I'm trying to communicate. How do I do it? Working on my skills like all the time. So that is something that I take very seriously. And there's a huge responsibility. And I come from a lineage of artists, and so I particularly take it very seriously. I think my biggest pet peeve personally would be having to do like the social media and the influence that social media has had on how people think about collecting and purchasing. And to your earlier point, what makes art? This is an active conversation that we could have for, forever. So I think for me, it's the amount of time that I need to be out of my studio running the business of being an artist that really, I think, takes away from, and it's very hard to do both at once for me. Very hard.
Very true. Once again, like it's another full-time job.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, since when did painters, have to learn how to do Instagram and market and crop images and resize images? Like, it's just, you know what? There are a lot of things I'm just not great at. And I need to outsource them a lot. And it's usually my poor husband who is very
Christina, your pet peeve.
Yeah. So I grew up in Woodstock, New York, and with a lot of really famous artists around me. And I was told at a pretty young age that I was not an artist. And that really held with me. And when I was in my 20s, I started, and I'm going to call it this because that's what we called it at this point. I started a craft business where I hand painted on a fiber called suede rayon, and I made a line of scarves and shawls and did the retail and wholesale craft circuit. And I did that for many years, and I got to see the most beautiful, beautiful art in the craft world. And the thing that I really noticed that was very hard for me to come to terms with is this sort of craft versus art. And at the time that I was doing the retail and wholesale craft circuit, I mean, we're talking like very high-end craft, I mean, unbelievable, blown glass and jewelry and turned wood bowls and hand painted fibers. And, and for me, I mean, that was art. That's art. But I had a lot of resistance in my world around the people who I grew up with. And I won't mention any names, but there were, I mean, these are like, real artists. And it was not very well accepted that I was a craft artist. I wasn't an artist, I was a crafter. And I really reject that. I really reject it. That's my pet peeve.
Art is subjective.
Yeah.
So, Jean-Marc, your pet peeve in the art world.
My pet peeve, let's see. Well, a lot of what's shaped what I do, I think may be all rooted in the kind of pet peeve around siloism. Folks who sort of distinction between art and politics, that somehow those things need to be separated. I find myself more interested in culture very often than art. I think there's a difference. And a lot of the work that I do, the more I think about it now, the more I think of myself as a public artist. I think of myself as someone who renders a service rather than someone who makes things. And so when I think about my practice that way, it allows me to sort of broaden a kind of range towards, for example, the project I'm doing in Rockland County at the Cropsey Community Farm, which was not something I would have expected to be a site for my sculpture, for my work. But when the commission, was interested in sort of reviving this 1790 barns, 17, I think it was 1762, this old Dutch barn that was on the Cropsey community, today is now on the Cropsey community farm. It was called the Blauvelt barn. And I immediately started thinking about, well, who built this barn? Who tended to the animals in this barn, especially in the 1760s, 1790s. Just doing a little search in the census, there's about 40 families that each, believed to own 1 to 9 people, 9 slaves. And so there were probably very many black Blauvelts, So I sort of draw from a lot to do my work, from history, from a lot from history, I guess. But it's kind of allowed the work to I love languages. All these Blauvelt families, obviously the Dutch families. It was well known that they weren't just Dutch. There were lots of Afro-Dutch. There were black people whose first language was Dutch, and that's what they spoke. And so started trying to imagine, what did that sound like? What was this creolized version of Dutch? And I mean, it's sort of means that I don't really make a distinction between what I'm doing. Is it public sculpture? Is it history? Am I studying? Do you know what I mean? Is it very political? Because quite honestly, I'll tell you, there were folks who work on the administration of the farm who weren't a fan of the piece, like we're not, that's too political, like, oh, slavery, huh? They, they said the S word, suddenly people freak out. And it's like, well, no, actually, this is the history. And the problem is, we have in Germany, for example, there's very well-developed culture of remembrance. I think in this country, we have a culture of forgetting, of amnesia. And the more I can do as a service, and the more I can promote, in this idea of whatever the opposite of forgetting is, remembrance. That's the task I want to put myself to. So, if it's a sculpture, if it's a lecture, if it's whatever grand proposal that it is I'm working on, I sort of, my first and foremost question is sort of what service am I providing, and is it a form of reparative justice? That's mostly what it's about.
Great.
I love the idea of service, though. That really rings really loud with me. It's a really beautiful way to walk the world being an artist, if you can really think of it in some form, whatever that means to the artist, but as a service. It's very special.
It sort of disentangles you from the, you're saying, Mike, that like art is very subjective, and it's true, but it disentangles you from the sort of the idea of like what role is it that I have to play, as me as an artist. It's like, it's not really about me. And I love that especially public art is I love the idea that it's going to be scrutinized by any number of people who might not even have anything to do with art. It might be, I did a piece for Dan Goswick, commissioned me in the town of Piermont, New York. He's the local fire chief. Not the most woke guy around. I'll just tell you, straight up. But he wanted to do a sculpture that honored their first line of duty death, LODD, the military and firemen and police to kind of, honor that. And their first line of duty death was a Black man named Thomas Pomplin, born in 1826, a year before the abolition of slavery. You want me to make a sculpture to honor, your first Black firefighter? Sign me up,
Did he know that that first man was a Black man?
Oh, of course.
He did. Right.
Oh, yeah. No.
That's so great. What a beautiful work. Yeah.
Mike Lawler was there. I don't necessarily, run into the same circles with that particular legislation branch, but it's like, okay, let's if this is what we can agree on, then
Yeah, cool.
maybe we're looking towards something that could be called progress.
Yeah.
Great
Well,
answer.
I think that art is, that is the responsibility if you choose to sort of wear that mantle, and not every artist wants that or should have that, but there is a responsibility to be of service in some way, whether it's, like you in public art, which is so important. It's vital for historical narrative learning, children, like you name it, or whether it's offering someone's spirit a respite, an opportunity to sit in front of something and absorb beauty, or whether it's an opportunity for them to question something in their own values, or whatever it is. I think there's infinite ways to be of service. But I think that you're right. That's the key maybe of what makes it art versus, something else. I don't know.
Craft.
I mean, I think there's a lot of overlap there. So I don't, I don't want to.
Yeah, no.
Like, there is a lot of overlap there. But
It's creative. It's creating something.
Intention. I don't know, what the difference would be there, but I do think when it's elevated from function to art, whether it's craft or not, it's because it's offering something deeper to the viewer.
Yeah.
In some way.
Well, somebody Yeah, it is a question, and they said, would you agree that anything made with your hands and the passion from your body and soul should be called art?
I think so.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
It would you agree that anything made with your hands and the passion from your body and soul should be called art?
Sure, call it art, you know? I mean, who's to stop you, you know? It's just like it's just really as simple as that, you know? I mean, I think the question is like, well, okay, now what role does what I do play in a conversation about, you know, bodies meeting bodies, or, you know, if it's I mean, I think we're hopefully beyond the debate about whether things are craft or art or fine art or folk art or found art or, you know, what do they call it? Um, what folk outsider art. You know, I mean, these are sort of crazy distinctions, right? It's just sort of, I think we've hopefully come to understand that it's more the culture, material culture. Like, you know, an archaeologist's dig will, you know, yield, you know, artifacts that will tell you as much about a people and the time and the place than, you know, anything else that we might sort of limit to uh, any any specific definitions. So I think it's you know it's for me anyway. I feel like what motivates me the most is, you know, what uh, can become a sort of a form of remembrance. I really do believe that all art is a form of memorializing. It is a form of remembrance, and I just particularly have a penchant towards all these empty pedestals because there's a lot of statues coming down. So you know, I don't think they should all come down, but I think, you know, well, while there's some empty pedestals, why don't we try and fill them, you know?
Yeah. Well, look, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, it's more recent that, you know, photography is considered art.
Mhm.
I mean,
Right.
you know, years ago. I mean, and I guess I kind of I didn't really realize it or pay attention, but I have to say that sometimes you run in circles and you do realize that people still have a little bit of a
Mhm.
you know, being a little snobby
Mhm.
towards the fact that you know, they can draw and they can paint,
Mhm.
and you know, you just take a picture. It's so
Yeah,
much more than that, really, though.
yeah.
Well,
Well, Michael, you know what they say, you know, a bad picture in color, you turn it black and white and it's art.
Yeah.
That is very, very true.
Yeah.
And you know what? And sometimes that does happen.
Yeah, I know.
You'll see a photo and you're like, oh, and then you switch it into black and white, or sometimes you switch into well, no, you can't switch into color. What am I saying? But like digitally, you know, everything is,
Mhm.
you know,
Colorize it. Yeah, yeah.
and yeah, you can change into black and white. It gives it a
mhm.
whole new look.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Look, even in
It's-
painting, um, for the longest time, acrylics were not considered artistic. It was you're doing oil, then you're an artist or a painter. But acrylic took a long time, same with photography, to have a become has a you know obtain a hold in the art world to be accepted because the medium is different, right?
So one last question, because we should probably wrap it up. Someone did say, well, wasn't Ansel Adams' work considered to be art or Man Ray? I guess that's true too. Um, I guess it depended on, I think years ago, probably black and white photography was probably considered to be a little more serious than,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you know, um, than like color, maybe until recently.
Well, maybe we'll all
Mhm.
be considered to be more serious, and let's just put us all in black and white.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
No.
Well, this was a wonderful discussion, and I hope that our attendees enjoyed all of our questions and answers. I think this was a great time. I hope the rest of you agree.
Yeah, I loved it. It was great.
And now we are going to get ready to announce the winner. And now I have to look for. So the winner is going to, they will get 2 passes at Climb Zone, and it's for free 60-minute climb sessions. So, and the winner for that is Wendy Drews.
Yay!
Wendy, are you here? I see Wendy's name here. So, Wendy.
Wendy has to
Thank you.
unmute. If she doesn't unmute and then doesn't show up,
No,
you
she's
don't
here.
get a prize.
She's here. So she will, she gets her prize. So Wendy, you're going to have to send your mailing address, not here, but to rocklandarts@gmail.com. So you're going to email your address to rocklandarts@gmail.com to get your prize. And as a reminder, that for everyone to go on to www.rocklandartsfestival.org, to sign up for the rest of the events that run through February 9th. And thank you to all you artists for joining me tonight. This was really a wonderful chat.
Yeah, I learned a lot too.
Me too.
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great.
Okay. Good night,
Yep.
everybody.
Thanks.
Good
Thanks for
night.
the invitation. Come around, y'all. I mean, I think it's gonna be spring of 2024. We're gonna have the actual opening of the sculptures at Cropsey Community Farm. So I hope to see some folks out
Will
there.
that be posted
Yeah.
on your Instagram?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Trust me. Yeah, I'll be
You'll be
as
posting
soon
it?
as it's happening, you'll hear from me. Yeah,
Okay. All
for
right.
sure. For sure.
Mhm.
Great. Good night.